So we are still in the midst of Sfiras Weimer, but the topic we will be discussing today goes far beyond the dinim of Sfiras Weimer, and it is a broad-based general analysis and birur halacha regarding, do we say a brocha when we're mekayim a mitzvah based on the halacha of Safek Rabbanon lekula. And we will be discussing in our brief shiur 9 different sources, hiyoםhשחור, and try to work out a system and an understanding ma bein din ledin. So let's start off with the second source on our sheet, a seif in Shulchan Aruch. Tov Pei Tes Seif Beis. Reb Shlomo, do we have any dedications today?
Not that I'm aware of, but Amir Tzeshev.
So just one moment. So I want to dedicate the shiur l'refuah shalema of a wonderful, wonderful young Ben Torah I came to know recently when I was in America. Yehoshua Betzalel ben Leah Bluma. Kodesh Brochos should send him a refuah shalema min hashamayim. He needs a refuah. Wonderful boy, wonderful young Ben Torah, and such a bal emunah and betochen. So I daven for him, and I dedicate today's shiur, Yehoshua Betzalel ben Leah Bluma, shekodesh Brochos yishlach lo refuah shalema min hashamayim. So Seif Beis. Im tov b'yom ha'mu'unan v'bochu al Sfiras Weimer, chozrim l'spor kishetechshach. It was a very cloudy day, and it became dark quite early, and people thought it's after the shkia. And suddenly, the clouds were dispersed, and the sun broke out in its full glory, and people realized it's too early before the shkia. So going back 500 years, people didn't have watches, and they didn't have clocks. They knew when it's day and when it's night by looking up at the sky, looking for the sun, the moon, and the stars. So if it becomes obvious that they counted before the shkia, count again. And then the Shulchan Aruch writes, what we learn from the Lashon of the Shulchan Aruch is, by halachic definition, you could count before Tzeisek HaChovim. But a medaktikim, those that are medaktik mitzvahs, they wait till Tzeisek HaChovim. This question, counting Sfira after the Shkia, before Tzeisek HaChovim, is a big machlokes Rishonim. Sholosh machlokes v'duva, there are 3 different opinions. So we go back to source number 1, and that is the Tur. Let's just learn the Tur. It's not a very long paragraph. Mashikosav, it's not the Tur, it's the Beis Yosef. So let's go to the top of the page. Mashikosav Atur. V'zman ha'sfira metchilas halaylo, afilo einu layla mamish, ele safek chashecha yochel lispor. V'saf mesechet psocham kosav harosh. V'nere, the Safek chashecha yochel levorech. Ve'en tzorech lahamtin ad she'evad elaylo, ki even have a Safek Rabbanon. So the Rosh says Safek Rabbanon lekula, and because Sfiras Weimer bisman hazeh midrabbanon, even lechatchila you could count after the shkia. As you know, between the shkia and Tzeisek HaChovim and Safek Yom Safek Laylo, Safek Rabbanon lekula. V'oid nered odif tveisa machlachashecha mishum temimois. Miu, hatoises kosbo beperek Rabbi Shmor. Back up. Why did we jump away from the top of the page? Hatoises kosbo the einoi nera. Vaharan kosav, and now the Beis Yosef is quoting the Ran. Rava maforshim maskimim the Sfiras Weimer hashto. The leka hava, the leka korban, eina ere midrabbanon b'yalma. Zeichel amidash. ולפיכך אמרו בתוספות, לכיוון דמרבנן היא טוב לספור ביום ראשון בסופק תשעי כדי ששבע שבועות תמימות לגמרי. ואין זה נכון, שיכניס עצמו בסופק לכתחילה. So the Ran says, yes, Sviras Woima midarabanan, and Sveke darabanan lakula, ein ze nochen sheyachnes atzmai besofek lachatchila. So this is a major discussion. And maybe at another time we'll speak about this. I don't know what our plan is for next Sunday. I'll talk with Reb Shlomo. Next Sunday is the last Sunday before Shavuos. Maybe we'll do something on Talmud Torah. I'll talk with Rabbi Gaddisman. But maybe some other time we'll speak at more length about Sveke D'Rabbanan Lachatchila. But the Rosh says, even Lachatchila Yikutam Ben Shmoshes Sveke D'Rabbanan Lakula. The Ran says, no. Ein ze nochen sheyachnes atzmai besofek Lachatchila. When we say Sveke D'Rabbanan Lakula, means if you counted, you were Yoitze. But you don't go into a Sveke D'Rabbanan Lachatchila. Why not be on the safe side? Opinion number 3 is the Rashba. We skip 2 lines. Ubetshuvas and Rashba kosuv. And now you will realize that Siv Beis in Shulchan Aruch is entirely what the Rashba writes in this Shuvah. Siv shetol b'yom ha'mu'unan v'bochal sfiris ha'yom ha'choizrim. Dehechalei ma'hayom ha'sorei yomim ve'einem ele tisha. Ki yoyse yom shiur v'lo asiri ad seisik echavim. Okay. Not relevant to our discussion. והמדקדקים אינם סופרים עד seisik echavim וכן ראוי לעשות וכן הוא מנהג העולם. So the Rash was a compromise, a pshara between the Rosh and the Ran. The Rosh says, even lechatchila, you count with a brocha. Because Sviras Woim is midrabanan, Sveke D'Rabbanan Lakula, so you can make a brocha. The Ran says, no. Ein ze nochen sheyachnes atzmai besofek lachatchila. According to the Ran, you can't make a brocha. Comes the Rashba, and the Rashba says, Ikar haloche kedivrei harosh. It's midrabanan, you could make a brocha. However, amedaktikim, those that are medaktik b'mitzvahs, wait till say such a chol. So this is between the Rosh and the Ran. The Rosh says, even lechatchila, the Rosh says, not lechatchila sheba lichatchila. Medaktikim einam soifrim ad seisik echavim v'chein ra'ui la'asot. So these are 3 different opinions. And the Shulchan Aruch follows in the footsteps of the Rashba. So what we learn from the Shulchan Aruch and the Rosh and even the Rashba, you could make a brocha on Sfiras u'oima bein hashmoshes. Now we have a problem because we will see 4 different sources in the Mishnah Brura. Sveke D'Rabbanan Lakula, but you cannot say a brocha because Safek brocha is Lakula. Let's embark on this journey. Next source. Tkiyas Shoifa. Very short sif in Shulchan Aruch. Tkiyas Shoifa b'yom velo b'layla. Mishnah Brura. B'yom velo b'layla. Tichsiv yom truhi yelachem. Ve'im nimshach ad bein hashmoshes yitkabel li brocha. As you all know, there are 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. First day is Manat Torah. Second day, Sveke D'Yom is only midrabanan. And the Mishnah Brura does not differentiate between day 1 and day 2. And he says, if you do not blow the shofar all day, and you just got a shofar bein hashmoshes, blow. However, you cannot say a brocha. And why not? Why is it different than Sfiras u'oima? Second day Rosh Hashanah is with the Rabbanan. Why don't we say Sveke D'Rabbanan Lakula could make a brocha? Next source. Chayav odom likros ha'megillah b'laylo v'lachzor v'lishnoisa b'yom. Shel layla zman hakol halayla, shel yom zman hakol hayom. ואם קורא משולם עליו, עד סוף היום. משנה ברורה, עד סוף היום היינו שקיע סחמו. ואם נמשך עד בין השמושס, יקראנה בלי ברוכה. So the same din as shofar applies to Megillah. And Megillah is always midarabonon. And the Mishnah Berurah says, if you didn't read the Megillah all day, and the last few minutes, it's Bein HaShmoshes, you read the Megillah, you cannot say a bracha. Even though Megillah is midarabonon, why don't we say Safek midarabonon or Kuli, you could make a bracha. Next source, Hilchos Lulav. And we're up to source number 4. מצוות לולב ביום ולא בלילה, וכל היום כושר לנטילת לולב, שאם לא ינות לשחס, יתלנו אחר כך. מכל מקום, זה מקדים על המצוות, מה נמישל דון עצחמו, וכמצוות זה בשעס הלל. However, the mitzvah is kol hayoim kosher lenetilas lulav. Comes along the Mishnah Berurah Sif Cotton Beis. Ve'im lo yinato lo yad ben hashmoshes b'yom erishim mechuyev vaz nitlo yisvek yoraisi o beli brocha. V'achroinim eskimu debeshar hayomim af shu b'derabonon gam ken nochan litloi. Dein boi techa rak yazor shelo yevorech hazan anatila. So the Mishnah Berurah makes it clear, whether it's the first day in which Lulav is Manatoy the Begvulim, or the other days in which Lulav is only Midarabonon, you don't say a bracha. Shofar, Lulav, Megillah, Ben HaShmoshes, you don't say a bracha. So why Basfiras Oimi you could say a bracha Ben HaShmoshes? We're not finished yet. Next Mishnah Berurah is in the Samar Zayin. Samar Zayin is the Kriya Shema. ובשאר מצוות דאורייתא, היכן שמחויב לעשות סויסה מספקת, פוסק לאל סמל י"ז לעניין טומטום, הבטחה בציצס, וביורדיה לעניין מילה, באנדרוגינוס, וכן כל קריאה גבנה, דלא יבורך על המצווה, כי הברוכס דרבנן ספקה לכולם. אך יש פוסקים שמחלקים, let's go down, next page, down. יש פוסקים שמחלקים between הדאורייתא והדרבנן. בעיניך שהספק יהיה מחויב כלל במצווה כגון ההיא שכתבנו, ובין ספק בברכה. We need to go down to the next page. But the Mishnah Berurah's maskana is Mogen Avram, Shem Arivash, לא סביר לחילוק זה, תומד בלי bracha. So the Mishnah Berurah deals any mitzvah, whether it's Manatayra or it's Midarabonon, if it's a Safek, you say without a bracha. So why is it? How do we differentiate between the 4 sources in which the Mishnah Berurah clearly says, whether it's Manatayra or Midarabonon, you do not say a bracha. So why Vesfilas Oimi you do? So let me share with you my maharach, and I think it makes a lot of sense. The difference is, are we speaking about Ben HaShmoshes the Iyule Yoima, or Ben HaShmoshes the Afuke Yoime? So you're more familiar in English or in Ivrit than in Aramaic. There's a difference between Ben HaShmoshes at the beginning of the day or Ben HaShmoshes at the end of the day. All 4 sources that we quoted, Shofar, Lulav, Megillah, Kriya Shema, and Tefillah, in all those sources we're dealing, you didn't perform a mitzvah all day and the day is almost over. It's Ben HaShmoshes. Source number 4, we're also dealing with other types of Safek. Tumtum Bandrogel, Safek Zacha, Safek Nekeba. Regarding mitzvahs which men are mechuyev and women are exempt, like tzitzis. So in all these sources, how do we phrase the question? The day is almost over, it's Benish Moshes. Am I still Machuyev, or I am no longer Machuyev? Safek the Rabbanan Lakula says, you are no longer Machuyev. It's Benish Moshes, Safek Laila. You no longer have the Chiyuv. So if Safek the Rabbanan says you're potur and you don't have a Chiyuv, you can't say a bracha. But by Sfiras Hawoima, we're dealing with Benish Moshes not at the end of the day, but at the beginning of the day. How do we phrase the question if it's the beginning of the day? Am I mechuyev or not? If one says you're mechuyev, that's not a chumrah. That's not a chumrah to say you're mechuyev, because I'm going to be mechuyev all night. So that wouldn't be a chumrah if we say you're mechuyev a bit earlier. So if it's Benish Moshes at the beginning of the night, the way to phrase the question is, am I yoitza or not? Could I be yoitza if I count right now? That is the question. So Sveike de Rabbanan Lachumra says, Sveike de Rabbanan Lachula says, you could be yoitza. It's a Safek or lenient, you could be yoitza. At the beginning of the night, Sveike de Rabbanan Lachula, if the psak is you're not mechuyev, that's not a kula. That's not the kula we're looking for, because even if I'm putting now, I'm going to be chayiv in another 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 minutes. So if it's at the end of the day, Sveike Rabbanan Lachula says, you're potter. You're not mechuyev. The beginning of the day, Sveike Rabbanan Lachula says, you could be yoitza. That's the kula. Saying you're potter is not a kula. So what if I'm potter now? In another 15 minutes, I'm going to be mechuyev, and I'm going to be mechuyev for the next 10 hours all night. So the difference between Benish Moshes at the beginning of this Zman HaMitzvah and Benish Moshes at the end of this Zman HaMitzvah is, how do we define the question? What would be considered kula? At the end of the day, Sveike de Rabbanan Lachula says, you no longer have a chiyuv of Megillah, of shofar, of lulav, of tfilas mincha. You no longer have a chiyuv. That's the kula. And if Sveike de Rabbanan Lachula says you are no longer chayiv b'mitzvah, then you can't say a bracha. But Benish Moshes at the beginning of the night regarding Sfiras Hawoima, or any other mitzvah, but not shofar and not lulav, because these mitzvahs are only by day, below balayla. But the same question would be between the alois and the neitzach early in the morning. But the poskim don't deal with this question. So at the beginning of this man chiyuv, kula means you could be yoitza. And if Sveike de Rabbanan Lachula dictates you could be yoitza, you could make a bracha. So I know this chiddush seems, it's nuanced, but I think it's very poshut. But the fundamental difference is, how do we define chumrah and kula? And there's a fundamental difference between Benish Moshes at the end of the day, Benish Moshes at the beginning of the day. So when a person asks, Benish Moshes every night, could I count sfira? The kula is not that you're not mechuyev. The kula is, if you count, you're yoitza. So according to my interpretation, if a person forgets sfira all day and he remembers next night the Benish Moshes, he could still count and be yoitza, but in that event, he will count without a bracha. Because at the end of the day, Sveike de Rabbanan Lachula says, you're not mechuyev. However, maybe regarding Sfiras Hawoima specifically, even at the end of the day, one could make a bracha. And I'll tell you why. Because maybe Safek the Rabbanan Kula would be to define, you could be Yoitza, your Machiev, and then you could continue your count in the coming days. So maybe Tzis would be different than Shofar, Lulav, Megillah. Because the Kula would be to say, you could be Mekayim the mitzvah, and then you could keep on counting the other days. But this question is a different question that has to do with Safek Sveka, and we're not getting into this now. Let's continue our search. Reish Samach Aleph, Safek Chashecha, Ben Hashmoshes the Ayule Yoim. We're dealing with Ben Hashmoshes, Belel Shabbos Kodesh. Ein Ma'asre Misavadai, Ve'ein Madbila Misakainen, Ve'ein Madliken Esaner, Ve'ein Ma'arven Eru Ve'techumin. אבל מעשן אסדמאי, תוימן מסחמן, ומערבן עירו וחצרוס. You could make עירו וחצרוס. So, we're not going to get into a discussion now. What is the difference between עירו ותחומן and עירו וחצרוס? This is not what we focus on in today's shiur. So, עירו וחצרוס the Rabbanon, like the Rabbanans were somewhat makel. But what is important is the Mishnah will receive Kot Nalef, next source. Ben Hashmoshes, ve'im nestapek im megia zman be'ben Hashmoshes, gam kein osur. And that is Eruv Techumin. And be'alacha, Eruv Chatzeres, you could do Ben Hashmoshes. And he has a discussion with a bracha or without a bracha. So, I'm going to go to Simen, looking for a tamim, Sorach Lazar, Levachases, Kodim Ben Hashmoshes, Psikalei Ben Hashmoshes, Yochal Avorach, Gam King Keshamanicha, Levachases. V'lo Keshad Vorim, the Kaimeran, Safek, Brochos lahakel. Batam tzorach loimed ele inyan eru b'chatzeres dekil aso hadava keilu uvadai yoim. Hard to understand the Magen Avraham. So the Mishnah Berurah writes, all other places Safek Brochos lahakel. But when you do eru b'chatzeres, you could make a bracha. And why is that? Because Eru B'Chatzeres is a Isur Kal, it is as if it is Vadai Yoim, which is a strange svara. We'll get to it in another moment. Next source deals with Netilas Yadayim Leseuda. Mayim sheyesh lehem safek im na'aseh behem malacha im lav. Mayim she'osu behem malacha posel netilas yadayim. You cannot take water in which you wash the dishes, or you wash your face, or you did netilas yadayim in the morning when you got up from sleep, and use that same water. Netilas yadayim leseuda. Na'aseh behem malacha posel netilas yadayim. So what happens if you have a safek? Or sheyesh le safek im yesh behem keshir im lav. Or amem tamei motor. Or safek im not liyodav im lav. Toher. Because safek tahara b'yadayim toher. We are makel by all sfekes of netilas yadayim. V'yesh v'shoimah. Shal kol zoysim yesh lo mayim acherim sheyet liyodav v'yotzi atzmai min ha-safek. Great. And then the Mishnah Berurah says, do we say a bracha or not? So what we read now is the Shulchan Aruch. Let's have a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Ma'im sheyesh behem bi'alocha. Ma'im sheyesh behem safek im na'aseh behem alocha. Mashma b'pnim v'kodem yochal avorach aleim. Gam kein. Achrei she'shu chazal little b'yoyse mayim. So you could say a bracha. So the Mishnah Berurah regarding the Netilas Yadayim quotes what he wrote by the Chatzeres, that you could make a brocha. Why doesn't he quote 4 different sources that we learned before, in which he says, you do not make a brocha even though Safek derabanan lekula. So there must be some common denominator between Netilas Yadayim and Eruv Chatzeres, and they're different than Shofar, Lulav, Megillah, Tefillah. Why? So in Minchas Osher, could we fetch the Minchas Osher? Well, that would be much of a tercha. Minchas Osher.
We do have, if the Rav talking about Siman Lamed Zayin and Mayadim.
Right. Yes, Siman Lamed Zayin.
So we do have it for Pesach. Either you or Mordechai have it, so we can accede.
It is page Reish Pei Zayin. Page Reish Pei Zayin. Minchas Osher Mayadim Chelik Gimel. Siman Lamed Zayin.
You don't have to search it from scratch, Pesach, because I sent it to you on Friday. Which ice is the Rav looking for?
Ice base, but it's page Reish Pei Zayin. If you have the Tzuras Adaf, it would be Reish Pei Zayin. It's ice base.
Yeah, it was sent to you. Well, let's see. Pesach, do you have this?
So maybe I'll continue on talking, and I hope maybe we'll have it on the screen.
Okay, it's coming. Maybe there'll be Takatach Dibur. If the Rav could kindly begin, and we'll put it up.
Okay. Regarding these 2 halachas, Eruv Chatzeres and Netilas Yadayim, the discussion doesn't start in the Achronim. It's actually Chazal. Shabbos Lamed Daled Omud Aleph. The Gemara clearly differentiates between Eruv Tchumen and Eruv Chatzeres. And regarding Eruv Chatzeres, it's a Gemara Mefureshes. Here we are at the bottom of the page, bottom of the left column. V'yesh lo imer oid lechalek. Ben Eruv Chatzeres ben Hashmoshes dekach tiknu Chazal. T'muta la'anicha ben Hashmoshes u'kumavua v'Shabbos Lamed Daled Omud Aleph. That's a Mishnah Mefureshes, Mesechet Yadayim Perik Beis Mishnah Daled. V'kiven shesveikes eile huchsharu al yidei Chazal, harei kach tiknu me'ikora. Heim omru v'heim omru. U'mishum kach shapem mevarchinen aleim. Ma she'en ken b'kol shas v'garaboron shelo matzinu dinam aproti b'Chazal. So this is a very powerful argument. It's a Mishnah Mefureshes, all the Sfeikis and Netilas Yadayim lekula. And it's a Gemara Mefureshes that you could do Eruv Chatzeres ben Hashmoshes. So these 2 stand apart, because these 2 are Tekonas Chazal. That is what Chazal were metaken. And Chazal said, Safek Netilas Yadayim kosher. So it is Chazal that dictated. You mekayim the mitzvah of Netilas Yadayim b'Safek, and the same regarding Eruv Chatzeres, and that's why you could make a brocha. All the other sources, the 5 other sources, starting off with Tzvias Avoima, Shofar, Lulav, Megillah, Tefillah, Tzitzis, Bayan Androgenes. These halachas are not in Chazal. They're in the Poskim, they're in Achronim, and therefore it's a Milsa Detalia B'Svora. Netilas Yadayim is a Mishnah, Safek is Kusha, Eruv Chatzeres is a Gemara, Tikun Chazal. However, let's scroll down to Reish Pei Vav in the Minchas Osher. We go back a page and a half. Back to Reish Pei Zayin. We scroll up and down, and back to Reish Pei Vav. Previous page. Here we are. V'oid nechleku at the bottom of the left column. V'oid nechleku legabe eruv tafshilin im kovush kimevushal. Erev tafshilin, you're familiar. When Yom Tov falls Erev Shabbos, and you want to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos, you need to do Erev Tavshilin. And Erev Tavshilin, you put aside Erev Yom Tov. Pas v'tavshil. And if you put aside the Erev Tavshilin, that permits cooking or baking or doing any melacha from Yom Tov to Shabbos. And there's a machlekes with the kodesh k'mevusha. In Isur v'heter and basa b'cholav, kodesh k'mevusha. What's kodesh in English? I think it's marinated, pickled, marinated. So there's a machlekes kodesh k'mevusha. B'shalas yeshuvas chacham tzvi simakuf lamet kosav dekiven dehavet harabonan yesh lokol b'sfeikot ach lo yavorech Safek Brochos. That's the chacham tzvi. Ubisharas yeshuvas noide b'shaorim. Next page. Orach hayim simavav kosav. Shelo yemotze b'zeh shum ra'im mefareshes ach not aloim ed yochal avorech. Because Safek harabonan lakuli could make a brocha. So the noide b'shaorim was one of the Gedolim in Galicia. His name was Rabberesh Ashkenazi. So it's a machlokes whether you make a brocha. Everybody agrees that the Erev Tavshilin is valid. Machlokes achronim with a brocha, without a brocha. So just a moment ago I said, Erev Chatzeres and Netilas Yadayim is a chazal. Erev Tavshilin is not a chazal. As you see, it's a machlokes chacham tzvi and noide b'shorim. So what is this for? So let me share with you chiddush number 2. The first what I said is to differentiate between ben hashmoshes at the end of the zman or ben hashmoshes b'tchilas zman, and that's the difference between Sfias Oima and the other 4. Now we have 3 halachas in which we say Sfeika de Monokuli, you could make a brocha. Erev Chatzeres, Netilas Yadayim, Erev Tavshilin. So let me share with you svara number 2. These 3 mitzvahs are not a chiyuv. Person has no chiyuv to do Erev Tavshilin. He has no chiyuv to do Erev Chatzeres. He has no chiyuv to do Netilas Yadayim, unless he wants to eat bread. As long as he doesn't want to eat bread, you have no chiyuv. So how do you define kula and chumra regarding these 3 mitzvahs? Regarding a mitzvah chiyuvis, I mentioned before, if it's at the end of the day, the kula would be your potter. You don't have a chiyuv. The beginning of the day, the kula would be, you could be yaitz. How do we define chumra and kula? By mitzvahs that are not a chiyuv at all. I think it's bullshit. Chumra would be to decide that it's invalid, doesn't work. You can't cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. You can't take anything out from your private domain to a shared domain. That's what Erev Chatzeres is all about. Netilas Yadayim is invalid and you can't eat bread. Kula would be validity. It's valid. It works. The Netilas Yadayim works. You could eat bread. Erev Chatzeres works. You could take out from your private home to the stairwell or to the chotzer mishutefes. By Erev Tavshilin, the kula would be that you could cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. So if Sfeika de Rabbanan dictates that it's a kosher erev and it's a kosher Netilas Yadayim, then you could make a bracha. So it all boils down to the fundamental question, how do we define kula? What would be defined chumra? What would be defined kula? So any mitzvah that is not a chiyuv doesn't rest upon us as a chiyuv. It's just like a chalois. Netilas Yadayim permits eating bread. Erev Chatzeres permits carrying things out from your private domain to chotzer mishutefes, to a shared domain. Erev Tavshilin permits cooking from Shabbos to Yom Tov. That would be the kula. And if kula says that the erev is kosher erev, and the Netilas Yadayim is a netilo kshera, then we say you can make a bracha. Because Sfeika de Rabbanan dictates that it's a proper netila, proper erev b'chatzeres, proper erev tavshilin. And that is the common denominator of these 2. And why do I like this mahalach more than the earlier one? Because this one will also cover Erev Tavshilin. Erev Chatzeres and Atilis Yadayim, our Mishnahs and Gemaras, but Erev Tavshilin is not. And according to my mahalach, I agree with the Noida B'Shaorim. Safek Erev Tavshilin, Kovish Kamavishil, you could make a brocha, velo kedivre achechan tzvi. And I think now we come to probably the most fundamental source and the biggest chiddush in today's Shiur. Seemed to be a stira. And I think this is a source number 10, actually, not 9. Let's do our arithmetic again. We start off with Tzvi Yisawayma. Then we had 4 different sources, which brings us up to 5. And then Erev Chatzeres, Erev Tavshilin and Atilis Yadayim, which is 8. Yes. So now we are up to source number 9. And then we'll have 10. Great. Tov Pei Vav. When I came on, Reb Shlomo was discussing Tov Pei Vav. So let's have the next source on our sheets and the Tov Pei Vav, the Mishnah Berurah. So the Shulchan Aruch brings Tov Pei Vav. Tov Pei Vav is a very short sif, to the best of my recollection. It only has 1 sif, the entire siman.
For Pesach?
Are we on?
Yeah, we're coming back
Tov Pei Vav. I'm just getting up a moment.
You can put the Mar Mekaymis back on, please. Our Mar Mekaymis. Thank you.
So Tov Pei Vav, the Shulchan Aruch brings 2 different opinions. What is the Shiur Kezayis? Tov Pei Vav is 1 short sif. And I'm reading the sif. Shiur Kezayis yesh oimrim dahava kechotzi beitza. Who's the other opinion? Doesn't write. Mishnah Berurah brings Machlokes Tosfos and the Rambam. Is it a chotzi beitza or a shlish beitza? Half or a third? Let's go there. Oh, here we are. Shiur Kezayis yesh oimrim chotzi beitza. Now we go back to our source sheet, the Minchas Osher sheet, our basic source sheet. So the Mishnah Berurah.
Mr. Brewer, the beginning source sheet, not the Shiur, the source sheet, Pesach.
Back to my sheet. Here we are. Chotzi beitza bein enesim kliposa. Das Rambam. Kezayis kishlish beitza. Va'ayin b'mogan rom v'bira rom ha'shekosfa b'zeh. Ule inyan dina. B'mitzvah dioraisa ki gam b'mitzvah saseh di'achilas matzi yesh la'achmi v'lechol ha'kol ponam chotzi beitza. Im lo yishu choyle. Then he could rely on the Rambam. Le'inyan morer, shu derabonon, yesh l'smok b'di'eved demachal kishlish beitza. Ach lechatchila, kivin shetzorach levorech al ha'morer, nera de'ein lahakol bezeh. So the Mishnah Berurah writes, Tzveka derabonon lekula. So regarding morer, which is miderabonon bisman hazeh, you could rely on a third of a beitza. Matzah's minatoris, so you need to be machmer chotzi beitza. However, the Mishnah Berurah says, but we need to make a brocha on morer, and that is why you need to eat a chotzi beitza. You should be able to make a brocha. Does that mean that you can't make a brocha if it's a suffix? Sveka derabanan, you do or you don't make a bracha. So how do we define the question? Could you be yaitza with a shlish beitza? The question is not whether you're mechuyev. Of course he's mechuyev. The question is, could I be yaitza with a shlish beitza? And a sveka derabanan lekola, then you could make a bracha. So according to my mahalach, why can't you make a brocha on a shlish beitza? So let me share with you my interpretation of the Mishnah Berurah, which is different than what others understood. The very first source we learned today is the Shulchan Aruch. Hamedaktikim einam seifrim ad tzeis hakechot. And the source of the halacha is in the Rashba. What did I explain? Yes, you could make a brocha bein hashmoshes, like the Rosh. However, a medactic b'mitzvahs, why not be on the safe side? Why get into Sfeika D'Rabbanan L'Kula if you don't need to? And therefore, if you made a bracha, it's not a bracha levatora, because Sfeika D'Rabbanan L'Kula, but a medactic, v'chein ra'ui la'asos, the Shulchan Aruch says. I think the same is the Mishnah Berurah here. The Mishnah Berurah says, why eat a shlish beitza if you could eat a half beitza? It's just like the medaktikim. Why get into Sfeikas and say Sfeika D'Rabbanan L'Kula when we're dealing with a bracha? Why? Why not wait another 15 minutes for Seisek Yechum? Why not eat another little piece of mutter to have a chotzi beitza? However, when the Mishnah Berurah writes, and that's the last line, in my opinion, with a bracha, not without a bracha, with a bracha. Because Sfeika D'Rabbanan L'Kula. And when the question is regarding Sfeika D'Rabbanan Shlish Beitza, question isn't, am I mechuyev? No question that you're mechuyev. The question is, am I yoytze? And the Sfeika D'Rabbanan L'Kula says you're yoytze. So my interpretation of the shit of the Mishnah Berurah is, because why get into Sfeikas? Why get into Sfeikas and why rely on Sfeika D'Rabbanan L'Kula if there's no shas chak? However, im ucholish v'kosheloi yochal lismach v'lechol shlish and with a broch. That's my shit and my understanding in Mishnah. And now source number 10, which is not on our sheet. But I would like to open up the Shulchan Aruch, Siman Tov Peitet Siv Zayin. We started off the Shiur today, source number 1, with Siv Beis, Tov Peitet Siv Beis. All the halachas of Sviras U'Moimer are in Siman Tov Peitet. And all the halachas are included in 9 seifim. So in Siv Beis, the Shulchan Aruch deals with the question of Bein Hashmoshes. And he writes a medaktikim, einam soifim, ad seisat yechavim. And it is clear from this Sif, if it's a Safek, you still could say a bracha. And there seems to be a stira in the very same siman. Tov, Pei, Tet, Sif, Zayin. We'll have it on our screen in a moment. So the Shulchan Aruch deals with the question, if a person forgot to count by night, and he remembers the other day in the morning, could he count or not? And the Shulchan Aruch writes, if you forget to count by night, and you remember in the morning, shochach v'lo birech kol halaylo yispor b'yom b'li bracha. Why b'lo bracha? Why b'lo bracha? Because there's a machlokes and a shainim, whether you could count by day or you can't count by day. So on one hand, we say Sfeika D'Rabbanan L'Kula and you could count. But Safek Brochos L'Kula, so you can't say a bracha. So Siv Zayin seems to contradict Siv Beis. Siv Beis by Bein Hashmoshes, it is clear in the Shulchan Aruch, you could say a bracha. It is only the medaktikim that wait till Seisek Yechavim. That is the Sif for which we started off the Shiur today. Siv Beis. Hamedaktikim einam soiflim ad Seisek Yechavim b'chein ra'ui la'asos. But it is obvious that is only a chumrah, the medaktikim. But if you count the Bein Hashmoshes, you do say a bracha, as the Mishnah Berurah makes clear. So why in Siv Zayin, when it's a Safek D'Rabbanan, because Sviras U'Moimer Bisman is a D'Rabbanan, and there's a machlokes whether you could count by day or not. So why does he say B'li bracha? So according to my Mahalach, no stira at all, and it's beautiful. Because if you did not count by night and you count the day, how do we define the Safek? Are you mechuyev or not? So what does Sfeika D'Rabbanan say? You're not mechuyev. And therefore, if Safek Derabbanan dictates you're not mechuyev, you count without a bracha. And this brings us back to the first yesod I said today. Before we discuss Netilas Yadayim, when we discuss the four sources in which the Shulchan Aruch, the Mishnah Berurah says no bracha, and Tzvias Oim, in which there is a bracha. So let me revive your memory. It depends how we define Kula and Chumrah. So Benish Moshes at the beginning of the day, the Kula would not be your potter. That's not a Kula. I'm potter right now. But in 15 minutes, I'm going to be chayav for 10 hours. The Kula would be defined, you could be Yoitzer. But I forgot by night. And the question, could I count by day? That is like Benish Moshes at the end of the day. That is like Benish Moshes the Afuke Yom, Benish Moshes the Yetzias Yom, not Benish Moshes the Knisas Yom. And therefore the Kula would be, you don't have a Chiyuv. That would be the definition of Safek Derabbanan Kula. And if Safek Derabbanan Kula says you're potter, you can't say a bracha. And that is the teretz of what seems to be a contradiction, minei ubei, between two seifim in Shulchan Aruch, in Siman Tov Beites, and the dinim of Sfiras U'Omer. So today we dealt with 10 different sources. And all these 10 sources deal with the very same question. When the halacha says, Safek Derabbanan L'Kula, do we make a bracha or don't we make a bracha? 10 sources, seemingly contradictions, and hopefully, I think we worked it all out in a very beautiful fashion. So if you want to go over today's shiur, Minchas Osher, Moedim Chelek Gimel Siman Lamed Zayin, but I think we had everything, most of the sources were clear on our source sheet, and it was a pleasure to learn with you this sugya.